Sometimes you need to share your work with people who aren't on your network. Maybe they work for different companies, or maybe you want to share documents with the general public. Well, other times you might want to make documents available for download only to people who have the right password, or maybe you just want to store documents online for yourself, kind of like a virtual USB memory stick. Well, I want to show you two solutions for this. One is a free service from Microsoft called SkyDrive, and I signed up in advance at www.skydrive.com. The other solution I'll show you is Microsoft SharePoint. SharePoint is a commercial software product sold by Microsoft. You could install your own SharePoint server, or you could rent service on a commercial SharePoint server. I'll show you SkyDrive first. Now, both SkyDrive and SharePoint make use of the web version of Excel, and the web version of Excel doesn't support everything that the desktop version of Excel supports. In fact, you'll notice that the title of this report isn't a nice graphic, it's simply text with a background, and that's because the web-enabled version of Excel doesn't support that type of graphic. So let's go into SkyDrive. Go to the File tab, so you get into Backstage View, and then down here choose Save and Send. And let's click on Save to Web. And because I've already signed up with SkyDrive, and Excel remembers my credentials, it shows me that I have some folders up here. Now this shows me that I have two folders. One they call My Documents, and the other is Public. Now this folder called My Documents is actually up on the SkyDrive server. It's just the same name. Microsoft gave the same name to two different things. You'll notice that there's a lock there. That means that for anybody to get into this My Documents folder, they need to have my password. If I save anything in the public folder, then anyone who happens to stumble on the address can find it. So I'm going to leave My Documents selected and click Save As. And now my Save As dialog box comes up, and I'm going to call this Current Inventory, just so we distinguish it from the file called Saving Shared Locations, which we have open. And I'll click Save. And when it's saving, you might notice down here on the bottom, it says that it's uploading to the server. Okay, now that it's on the server, we want to take a look at it on the server, so let's close it in Excel. You could press Ctrl F4 or click the lower close button here. Okay, now I've already logged into my SkyDrive account, and you can see there is My Documents. I also have another private folder called Favorites. I have a public folder called Shared Favorites, and there's that public folder we saw before. So I'm going to click on My Documents, and there is that current inventory file that we just saved. So let's take a look. Click it, and now you have this big graphic, and on the right you have some information about the file itself. And you can type a comment there if you want. Well, let's take a look. Click this big graphic, and it opens the file in your browser. Now, I happen to be using Microsoft Internet Explorer, but you can use other browsers too. Now, I can click anywhere that I want, and I can scroll, and I can see what's in here, and you notice that all three worksheets of this workbook are available. But I can't actually edit anything until I click Edit in Browser. And now this is open in the web version of Excel, and you can see there's a version of the ribbon bar. Now this ribbon bar and this web version of Excel is not completely exactly like the desktop version of Excel. It gives you about 10% of what the desktop version of Excel gives you. It's certainly not a substitute, but there are a few things we can do. For example, see columns B and C, we have numbers of barrels of olives on order. Let's say we want to total those up. I'm going to scroll down to the bottom here, and I'll click down there in A29, and I'll type total, hit the tab key. Now I want to put in the sum function, but if you look at the ribbon bar, you'll see that there is no auto sum tool, so I have to sort of do this manually. So I'll type in equals sum, and you see Excel will offer to fill it. Now normally with the sum function, I would go to the top and I would scroll down. The problem is this doesn't scroll very well automatically, so I'm going to do something that I normally don't do in a worksheet, and that is I'm going to actually type in the cell references. So I'm going to say the sum of B5 colon B27, close the parenthesis, press tab to get to the next column, and I'll do the same thing with column C. I'll say equals sum, open up the parenthesis, and here I want the same rows, just a different column, so that's going to be C5 through C27. Okay, now let's scroll back up. Now if I wanted to, I could take this document and immediately open in Excel by clicking that button over here. But instead, I'm going to click back on My Documents. So we're back to where we were before, so that now I'll go into the desktop version of Excel to open it up, and we'll see that change is there. So here I am in Excel. I'll go to the File tab, to Recent Files, and here is that current inventory. And you'll notice that very long file name. That's because it's up on the server, not on my local computer. So when I click it and open it up, here it is, and let's scroll down, and there are the totals that I created. Now one more thing. I'm going to close this. Again, I'll press Ctrl F4 or click that Close button. Let's go back into SkyDrive, and again, let's click that. And let's say somebody else is logged in and they want to get it. They can simply click the Download button and then download it on their computer. I'm not going to do that right now. I'll do that in SharePoint. So I'll just cancel out, and let's go back to Excel. Okay, now let's take a look at SharePoint. Let's go back to the File tab, and I don't want to open it up here. I'm going to open it up from the original shared locations. So this is the original one. Now let's go and put it into SharePoint. So again, I'll go back to the File tab, go back to Save and Send, and this time I'll save to SharePoint. Now you might wonder, when would I use SkyDrive and when would I use SharePoint? Well, SharePoint is much, much more robust. SharePoint is meant to create an intranet. Let's say you have a client that you work with, and you're one company, your client is another company. For the most part, you want to keep your network separate, but there are projects that you collaborate on, and you do need to have this interface. And SharePoint will give you sort of like a whole corporate website with discussions, file libraries, calendars, to-do lists, tasks, all that kind of stuff that you can both collaborate on. SkyDrive doesn't come anywhere near that. SkyDrive is mostly just a repository for files. So let's go into SharePoint. And already I've logged in. I've already created my account. I've logged in before, so it has it up there for me. So all I have to do is click Save As. Okay, so my Save As dialog box comes up, and you can see it's kind of branded here with SharePoint. And I'll call this, again, Current Inventory, and I'll call it SP for SharePoint, just so we know that this is a different file than what we saved in SkyDrive. And click Save. And you see down here, it's uploading to the server. Okay, and same thing. I'm going to close this file. Press Ctrl F4 on your keyboard, or click the Close button here. And now I've logged into SharePoint. I'll just press the F5 key on my keyboard to refresh, or you could click the refresh button in the browser. And here is Current Inventory SP. So click it, and it opens up. Looks a heck of a lot like SkyDrive, doesn't it? Well, let's edit in the browser like we did with SkyDrive. Click here on Edit in Browser. And now we have the same sort of ribbon bar just like we had in SkyDrive. So I'll make another small change. Over here in column D, we have cost per barrel. I'll take an average of that. So we'll go down here. And I'll go to 829, and I'll say average cost per barrel. And I'll type in equals average, open it up. And also, just like in SkyDrive, there is no auto sum or auto average feature on the ribbon bar, so I have to type it in manually. And also scrolling here doesn't really work all that great, so again, I'm just going to type in the cell references, which is something I generally would not do in Excel. So I'll say the average of D5 through D27, close the parenthesis. Okay, so now I have my average cost. Now let's scroll back up to the top. Now up here I have the breadcrumbs, so I'll click on that Two Trees Olive Oil Company. I come back. Now this is SharePoint 2010. It has some pretty nice features. Now instead of clicking the file name here, I'm going to click the icon itself. And when I do that, now I have the SharePoint ribbon bar. So the SharePoint ribbon bar is different from the Excel Web Access ribbon bar. One of the nice features that Excel and SharePoint work together with is the check-in and check-out feature. So I can click here, check out, check the file out, and now you can see there's a little icon there. So if anyone comes in here while I have this file checked out, they won't be able to do it because I'm using it. So that way you can make sure that two people aren't making changes to the same file at the same time. Now let's go and open the file up in Excel. So I'll go back to Excel, go back to the File tab, and here's this very long path to the SharePoint portal where this file is. So I'll click it, and it opens up, scroll down, and there's the average that I put in. Again, I'm going to close it, press Ctrl F4, or click the X. Let's go back to Internet Explorer. Now I'm ready to check it back in. Click the icon, and I click check in. And now this asks me if I want to make a comment, and I'll just say something like examined file contents. So anybody else who opens this up after me, they'll know what I did when I had the file checked out. And I'll click OK. Now, we don't have time to go through all of SharePoint because this is an Excel class, but if you do want to learn about SharePoint in depth, take a look at some of the SharePoint Essential training here on lynda.com. It's very, very good.